The difference between a ruler and the ruled begins not in wealth, blood, or armor, but in thought. The king's power is forged in his mind long before it manifests in his hands. He views the world not through the fog of emotion, but through the architecture of systems. Every moment, every action, every word is not a reaction. It is a calculated move in a larger pattern of control. The peasant, by contrast, responds to what he feels: anger, joy, envy, hope. These are the winds that blow his mind from one direction to the next. He does not plan, he endures. He does not construct, he copes. His world is immediate, reactive, and blind. His emotions make him a slave to events. The king, on the other hand, feels nothing publicly. He watches, interprets, measures, and moves only when the structure allows for the highest return. To think like a king is to understand that chaos only exists for those who lack a blueprint. The common man sees a betrayal and curses his luck. The king sees a betrayal and traces the root, adjusts the design, and prepares his counterbalance. Where the peasant sees a personal insult, the king sees an opening to reposition himself. Nothing is wasted in the mind of the powerful. Emotions are allowed to rise only when they serve a strategic purpose. Anger becomes a performance, sadness becomes a mask, joy becomes a weapon to disarm suspicion. Emotion is never allowed to direct the wheel. It is merely decoration for the passengers watching from outside. A peasant will ask, "Why is this happening to me?" A king asks, "How does this event fit into the larger framework of control?" One seeks fairness, the other seeks leverage. The king is not interested in blame, he is interested in function. If betrayal happens, he does not moralize. He identifies the weak point in his structure that allowed such access. If loss occurs, he calculates the cost and reshapes the machine. He knows that the mind must rise above the moment. Emotion is too heavy a burden to carry into war, into politics, into negotiation. Cold eyes see clearer. A stable structure never panics. The king's life is not ruled by the day. He is not governed by what just happened, nor does he spend his life reacting to insults or praise. He moves by principle, by architecture, by long-term objectives that reach far beyond the understanding of the ordinary. He draws blueprints where others draw boundaries. He thinks in seasons while others think in hours. When the peasant curses the storm, the king adjusts his irrigation. When the peasant weeps at betrayal, the king tightens his alliances. This is not cruelty, it is clarity. Where others feel, he builds. The peasant waits for conditions to improve. The king manufactures conditions. He does not leave his fate in the hands of chance or hope or prayer. He understands that the world is a machine, complex, brutal, and indifferent. Those who cry to the machine are crushed by it. Those who study it learn to manipulate its gears. That is the difference in thinking. One seeks comfort in belief, the other in mastery. And mastery demands the discipline to step outside oneself, to rise above panic, and to sculpt reality with cold intention. A peasant lives in the moment. He argues, begs, hopes, and reacts. The king watches the board. He predicts behavior, plots incentives, and sharpens consequences. He knows that people are not driven by what is right, but by what is rewarding. He constructs systems that reward obedience and punish deviation. Emotion cannot do this. Emotion forgives. Emotion rationalizes. But the structure does not forget, and it never lies. The structure rewards only precision. Thinking like a king means seeing your mind as a fortress, not a market. It is not open to every voice. It is not swayed by the noise of the crowd or the panic of the hour. It is reinforced, protected, measured. Decisions are not made in fire. They are made in stone. Each thought must serve a function. Each strategy must fit into the whole. And the whole must always lead toward power, stability, and endurance. The peasant may rise in wealth or title, but if he continues to think in reaction rather than structure, he is still a slave. He may own more, but he commands nothing. The mind is the first kingdom, and only those who rule it can hope to rule anything beyond it. Power is not won by solving problems. It is won by studying people. The man who obsesses over obstacles without understanding the minds that created them is forever trapped in reaction. He patches holes, but never commands the sea. The true ruler does not waste time mourning misfortune or cursing events. He looks past the surface of any situation and identifies the human levers beneath it. He does not ask what went wrong. He asks who benefits from this. He studies the hands behind the curtain, the hidden incentives, the unseen tensions, because problems are not isolated. They are produced, and they are useful to someone. The peasant is consumed by the immediate disruption. The king is focused on the architect of the disruption and how to either destroy or control him. Most men walk through life seeing only events: the storm, the riot, the betrayal, the missed opportunity. These appear to them like random occurrences, like bad weather. But those who rule understand that behind every disturbance is a person with intent. Sometimes incompetent, sometimes ambitious, sometimes both. The king trains his mind to look past the chaos and trace its source. Who gave the order? Who remained silent when they should have spoken? Who stood to gain? This level of thinking detaches one from the illusion of randomness and plugs the mind directly into the flow of power. Where a lesser mind sees a rival, the king sees a character in a play he is rewriting. He maps the rival's emotions, his habits, his desperation points. He listens more than he speaks, because every sentence a man utters reveals the shape of his ego. He asks questions not to learn facts, but to watch reactions. He knows that most people will expose themselves with enough silence. In negotiations, he studies breathing patterns, not just arguments. In alliances, he watches how quickly someone agrees. The speed of loyalty often reveals the instability beneath it. A king collects these insights quietly, storing them for the moment they are needed most, when influence must be asserted without violence. To rule people, you must first know how they function. Most act from fear, ambition, shame, or hunger. Their decisions are less logical than they believe. They dress their desires in rational language, but beneath it all lies desperation. The king does not scoff at this weakness, he exploits it. He places his gold where their fear grows. He shows favor when their ambition trembles. He denies them when their pride becomes too swollen. He is not cruel. He is precise. A man ruled by his emotions is easily ruled by one who understands emotion better than him. While peasants pray for better conditions, kings observe the human chessboard. They note who is loyal out of fear and who is loyal out of need. They keep both, but differently. They understand that loyalty is not a virtue. It is a condition, and conditions change. That is why a king never stops watching. He studies the eyes of the ones who speak too much, the tone of the ones who suddenly grow silent, the body language of the ones who linger after meetings. He does not confront impulsively. He collects information. Every betrayal, every rebellion, every conspiracy begins with a change in behavior. The king sees it early because he watches people, not just the words they say. A problem can be solved and return again, but a person, once understood, can be reshaped. The king spends less energy fixing broken systems and more energy rearranging the people who govern them. He removes one minister and loyalty is restored. He elevates one enemy and a rebellion collapses from within. His tools are not only laws or swords, they are faces, egos, alliances, secrets. He builds his kingdom not on stone, but on knowledge of character. He knows who will bend under pressure, who must be bribed, who needs public humiliation, and who will crumble under praise. These are not guesses. These are psychological equations he has memorized and weaponized. To think like a king is to know that power flows through people, not ideas. Ideas move no army without a man to speak them. Money builds no city without labor to serve it. Laws change nothing unless the enforcers believe in them or fear the hand behind them. That is why the king trains his eyes not on policy, but on the enforcers, not on the crowd, but on the voice they follow. Every throne is built on human nature. Those who understand people master events. Those who fix problems without studying people remain forever beneath the ones who pull the strings. The king does not react to events, he reacts to behavior. And in doing so, he always stays one step ahead. The true seat of power does not rest upon what is real. It rests upon what is believed. The king understands that perception is not a reflection of truth, but a force more potent than truth itself, while the peasant exhausts himself trying to convince others of his worth through deeds. The king cultivates an image that demands recognition without explanation. He knows that men do not follow what is proven. They follow what appears dominant, inevitable, and untouchable. Reality is often too slow and too subtle to command loyalty. Perception, however, is immediate and absolute. If you seem powerful, you are treated as powerful. If you seem generous, you are worshipped, even as you count your gold behind locked doors. To control perception is to own the minds of the masses. It is the art of appearing just while ruling with iron. It is the ability to look weak and humble while pulling strings behind the curtain. The king understands that visibility is vulnerability. If the people see all of you, they will search for flaws. If they only see what you show, they will imagine strength. He does not expose the full scope of his strategy. He reveals only what serves his long-term interests. A calculated smile, a perfectly timed gesture of mercy, a staged moment of generosity. These are not acts of kindness, but investments into public trust. And trust, once secured, is more dangerous than fear, because it blinds its holder to danger. The peasant believes power lies in actions, results, or morality. But the king understands that none of these matter if people do not believe in them. Perception makes men hesitate. It makes them obey, not out of law, but out of the fear that you see further than they do. To be feared is safer than to be loved, but to be both feared and admired is to become untouchable. And admiration is rarely earned through truth. It is earned through illusion maintained with discipline. A king is not concerned with being good. He is concerned with appearing just enough to justify his reign. If the people believe he acts with wisdom, they will overlook cruelty. If they believe he protects stability, they will excuse his control. He surrounds himself with symbols: gold to suggest prosperity, silence to suggest depth, ritual to suggest divine order. These are not decorations, they are weapons. The peasants see thrones and robes and assume authority. The king sees eyes and ears and controls what they witness. In a world ruled by perception, appearances are not superficial. They are the foundation of rule. The greatest kings in history did not conquer with armies alone. They conquered with legend. Their victories were exaggerated. Their defeats were buried. Their stories were crafted with the precision of a painter laying brush to canvas. The people need to believe. They crave a figure to project their hopes and fears onto. The king becomes that figure, not because he is perfect, but because he learns to hide the cracks and light the crown. When peasants speak of a king's glory, they are often repeating what they have been shown, not what they have seen. The king's reputation must always walk ahead of him, opening doors before he arrives and closing mouths behind his back. To focus on perception is not to lie. It is to control narrative. The world does not reward those who are merely competent. It rewards those who appear unshakable. If a man commits an error in private, but appears composed in public, his strength remains intact. If another man fails publicly, even if the error is small, his strength is questioned. This is why kings invest in the control of optics. The battlefield is not only land and sword, it is gossip, rumor, spectacle. A king who allows his image to be shaped by others has already lost half his kingdom. He may rule in title, but not in fear, not in love, and certainly not in loyalty. The peasant speaks his truth. The king sculpts his myth. One seeks understanding, the other seeks command. The king does not trust the people to interpret truth in a way that serves him. He feeds them what they are ready to believe. If the people want a hero, he becomes one. If they need a tyrant to fear to remain orderly, he transforms into their necessary evil. He does not demand belief, he manufactures it. He does not wait for approval. He engineers reverence. Every word, every gesture, every absence is part of a grand illusion that wraps the real in shadow and makes the imagined king more powerful than the real man ever could be. He invests not in truth, but in its clothing, because truth alone cannot rule. It can be dismissed, forgotten, challenged, but perception crafted carefully and reinforced through ritual and distance can become immortal, and in that immortality, the king no longer competes with men. He competes only with myth. The king does not rush. He knows that the first hand to move is often the first to bleed. Where peasants react, kings calculate. Emotion is a luxury the ruler cannot afford, especially in moments of pressure. The king understands the law of timing. Not every opportunity is ripe when it appears. Not every insult requires a response. Not every conflict deserves retaliation. He knows that silence is a strategy, and in that silence, others reveal themselves. The impatient man talks too much, shows too much, and spends his energy proving. The king speaks little, conceals intent, and forces others to act first, because every move the opponent makes in haste becomes intelligence in the king's hands. Haste is a condition of fear. When men feel powerless, they act quickly in hopes of regaining control. But those who act too soon expose their plans too early. They give away their position, their values, and their weaknesses. The king knows that a slow, deliberate hand always strikes with more force. He waits not because he is idle, but because he is building pressure, collecting facts, sharpening precision. A delayed decision, crafted with care, becomes a tool of domination. The longer he waits, the more the enemy becomes restless, and restlessness leads to errors. The king allows others to defeat themselves. He simply creates the conditions that make it inevitable. Even in betrayal, the king does not lash out. He lets the traitor believe he has succeeded. He observes how deep the deception runs, who else aligns in secret, and how much of the system has been compromised. Then, when the betrayal has fully matured, when it believes itself safe, the king moves, but not with noise. He removes quietly, replaces swiftly, and leaves behind no trace of panic. In this way, his authority grows, not by explosions of wrath, but by the unshakable calm that radiates fear into the hearts of those who watch. They begin to believe he sees everything, that his silence contains thunder, that his patience is a trap. The king does not interrupt chaos, he lets it unfold until it can be used. In war, this means allowing the enemy to overreach. In court, it means letting rivals speak too long. In politics, it means letting the people cry out before offering them a savior. The king's power is found not in how loudly he commands, but in how quietly he prepares. He is not provoked by insult, because insult is often a lure. He is not baited by flattery, because flattery is a test. He reads the undercurrents behind words and responds only when the message has fully revealed itself. To act too soon is to interrupt information before it arrives, but to wait is to gather the whole picture. And once you have the whole, there is no need for force. The move becomes clean, absolute, final. In ruling, the king applies pressure like a torturer, not a brawler. He applies it slowly, precisely, and watches closely for signs of fracture. A kingdom is not held together by sudden decrees, but by long, deliberate patterns of behavior that condition loyalty, establish fear, and generate predictability. Sudden movements are for the desperate and the weak. True authority is defined by the ability to move slowly and still be obeyed. Slowness in the king's world is not a flaw. It is a signal of power. The one who can wait is the one who has control. Peasants act because they are seen. Kings act so they remain unseen until the moment they choose to appear. Their hands are not idle. They are folded in contemplation, drawing the map of conquest behind cold eyes. The enemy grows loud, the court grows anxious, but the king remains still, and when the time comes to move, it is not with words, but with consequences. It is not with panic, but with inevitability, because the king who waits can destroy not just a man, but a bloodline, a reputation, a legacy. And he does so in such a way that no one dares move against him again. The slow hand is feared because it cannot be read. It forces others to speak first, to commit, to expose. That is how the king rules, not through noise, but through restraint, not by chasing power, but by becoming the still point others orbit around. In a world of men who act to be seen, the king is seen because he does not act. And when he does, it is already too late for anyone else to respond. The difference between the ruler and the ruled lies not in resources, title, or even cunning. It lies in what they believe governs the world. The peasant believes in fairness. He believes that virtue will protect him, that justice will prevail, that hard work entitles him to reward. He clings to moral frameworks not because they are true, but because they are comforting. Fairness is his shield against the chaos he cannot control. But the king sees reality unfiltered. He does not see fairness. He sees power. He sees that the world is not shaped by what should be, but by what can be taken, controlled, or threatened into alignment. He does not concern himself with what is deserved. He concerns himself only with what is possible and what is secure. To think in fairness is to tie one's hands. It is to ask, is this right? Rather than, does this serve me? It is to hesitate when speed is required, to explain when silence would dominate, to forgive when punishment would teach. Fairness assumes an order that the world does not offer. It assumes that others think like you, that good behavior will be rewarded by some invisible balance. But the king knows that power is not granted, it is seized. It is maintained not through moral appeal, but through leverage, fear, respect, and calculated reward. He does not beg the world to recognize his value. He creates conditions where ignoring him becomes dangerous. The peasant believes that speaking the truth loudly will protect him. The king knows that controlling what is believed is more powerful than any truth. The peasant clings to ideals like honesty, humility, loyalty. The king uses these concepts as tools to shape behavior in others, but he himself is not bound by them. He may appear humble to lower resistance, appear loyal to build trust, appear honest to extract secrets, but internally, he remains aligned to one thing only: advantage. He understands that power is not immoral or moral. It is amoral. It serves whoever knows how to wield it. And those who cling to ideals too rigidly become pawns to those who do not. The king does not measure actions by whether they are good or bad. He measures them by whether they move him closer to dominance or expose him to threat. His morality is strategic. He punishes when it fortifies his image, not when he is personally offended. He rewards when it strengthens obedience, not because it is owed. He understands that stability is built not through justice, but through control. People do not obey because things are fair. They obey because they know the consequences of disobedience and the rewards of allegiance. The king does not demand that the world be kind. He builds a world where others are careful. Peasants look to laws to protect them. Kings look to power to insulate themselves from law. A peasant sees the law as sacred. The king sees the law as a weapon, sometimes used, sometimes bent, sometimes ignored. He is not naive enough to believe that rules are neutral. He knows they are written by victors, interpreted by allies, and enforced by force. The king's goal is not to play within the system, but to own it, to rise above it, to bend it when necessary and reshape it when convenient. He does not protest injustice, he anticipates it, prepares for it, and uses it against those who believe they are protected by it. The king understands that fairness is often used by the weak to shame the strong into hesitation. It is a tactic, not a truth. He listens for it in the mouths of those who have no leverage, and offers it only when it benefits him. When he speaks of fairness, it is not to uphold a standard. It is to distract, to appease, or to control. Those who believe in fairness are easily manipulated by symbols. A public apology, a small concession, a carefully timed display of remorse. These gestures satisfy the peasant mind, even as the king tightens his grasp behind the curtain. To think like a king is to break free from the illusion that fairness will elevate you. The king does not wait for justice. He creates outcomes. He does not expect the world to repay him. He builds systems where the world has no choice. He does not look at what is right. He looks at what will work. He understands that morality is weak if it is not backed by force, that ideals are fragile when unsupported by fear. The peasant prays to be seen as good. The king ensures he is seen as inevitable. Power is the language the world understands, and the one who speaks it fluently is never at the mercy of the rules others worship. To think like a king is to transcend the emotional impulses that bind the masses. It is to trade reaction for strategy, impulse for calculation, and illusion for control. The mind of the ruler does not dwell in what is fair, but in what is functional. He does not waste time justifying himself through morality or waiting for others to grant him permission. He acts from a foundation of discipline, foresight, and ruthless clarity. The king does not see events as isolated incidents, but as consequences of human behavior and opportunities for advantage. He studies people, not just their words, but their patterns, their fears, and their loyalties, knowing that all structures, no matter how large, rest on the shoulders of men. And men, when understood, can be maneuvered. Where the peasant seeks truth, the king shapes perception. He does not trust reality to serve him. He crafts the appearance that suits his purpose. He knows that what others believe matters more than what is. And he masters the art of being seen exactly as he needs to be. Never more, never less. His silence is deliberate, his delays are strategic, and his patience is deadly. He is never rushed by noise, never provoked by insult, and never exposed by haste. His every move is timed not for emotional release, but for maximum impact. And above all, the king thinks in power. Not in hope, not in fairness, not in dreams, but in structure, leverage, and outcome. He understands that the world bends not for the just, but for the prepared. He does not pray for justice, he enforces stability. He does not beg for respect, he builds consequence. The mind of a king is forged in fire and sharpened by restraint, and those who learn to think as he does may never wear a crown, but they will never again walk as peasants.